Welcome back, everyone. Here we are with today's question. This one says, Vinny, what's the best way to develop confidence as a hypnotist? I want to be certain I'm delivering what my client needs. Yeah, this is a pretty awesome question. I love where your instinct is about wanting to build a sense of certainty about an outcome. There's a bunch of stuff we can explore in this video. I like this. So one thing is you're never really going to be totally certain, you know? And here's where I think there's a bit of a trap we can fall into. Uh, if you're trying to develop confidence and certainty, and it's like system dependent or like protocol dependent or something along those lines, technique dependent, I like to refer to it as, that's tricky, right? That's going to require you to develop a high degree of experience and skill utilizing that protocol. And then when you're working with a client, it's like, it may or may not work, right? Because we're kind of guessing at a symptom. So I think the logical conclusion here, um, if you really, really want to develop that sense of certainty that you're delivering for that client, it's going to come down to moving from a state of system and technique dependence to client dependence. And so this shifts everything. And this bit of a preamble to the main point I want to drive home comes down to testing. And so here's why I did that though. When I would test and I was operating as a practitioner in a way that was dependent upon a system or a protocol or something along those lines, it's almost like I knew there were certain lines I didn't want to cross in terms of like really trying to test a change. Like I would kind of pull back, like, oh, I don't know, because we set up the entire session as if my protocol is going to do the work for you. Suddenly your mind will change, right? It was a lot of like the idea of like I'm reprogramming your mind as if it were a computer. But we know as human beings, it's like a computer with a lot of emotions and other stuff, right? So that metaphor is not particularly sound when describing human beings, right? And how our mind works. So when I shifted to being more client dependent, and this is something I taught at my last training, it's like we actually try to destroy the work we did, because it's not about us being confident in the work. It's more about that client being confident they made a new choice and have created change. They're creating it all. All right, so moving from this sort of conceptual model of like I'm a hypnotist doing something to you, versus collaboration, right? We're not even doing like a collaborative model to like it's 100% on that client to change. And my job as a hypnotist is to create a space for their unconscious mind to develop or whatever it needs to get the tools that person needs to make change, right? And so all we're doing is really helping that person create a space, and then all the natural emergent phenomena occurs, all the neat stuff. And like if you've seen any of my demos, the regressions and the hallucinations and all that, right? I am not even, I'm not going into the session trying to create that. I'm just curious about what that person's unconscious mind is gonna suggest or communicate that it needs to do to solve the problem. And so we get into some fun stuff and rabbit holes. It's really interesting to see how the mind works that way. It's very, very interesting. But the big thing is, even though this comes from their mind, right, the tools and whatever, we're working in an organic way, that still doesn't mean I don't want to test that, right? I want them to have the confidence they've made a change here. And so to the extent they have that sense of confidence, I'm happy with it, right? It's like, that's all you can really know, right? Like you can't really know anything more. Like that's the thing you want to know, right? It's not about like, I did a technique and I know it works, right? It's like that client says, yeah, I'm good, right? Sometimes I get a bit annoyed, right? Like, Vinny, stop asking me questions. I'm happy. I'm not going to smoke again. So it's a different way of operating. And I've trained with fabulous, amazing teachers. They, didn't teach testing. They didn't believe in it. And I I don't operate that way, but I think the logic to their system makes sense, right? Because if you're just gonna like try to have a lot of expectancy, bring a lot of belief and confidence into the session, and you're hoping the client can kind of rely on your sense of confidence that this is working. There's like a bit of a maybe like a placebo thing going on there. I don't exactly, but I think that makes sense. That's a logical consistency, right? It's like then we wouldn't test. Okay, we would just say, hey, it worked, and we're just gonna believe it. Me in particular, though, I like where your instinct is. That's it was paying attention to those messages or like concerns that I had that helped me work the way I do with clients today, right? Because I just get like, well, this really, did that really work? And you go back and now it's because I work quite differently than other folks. If it didn't work, there's actually excitement. That's a good sign because it knows, well, we didn't get to the real problem. And then we same phase, right? We start to explore, and as we explore, we create a space for that client's unconscious mind. Again, right? It's a very simple way of working with people. Very organic in that way. The reason for excitement, though, is because it's like that change is going to be incredible, right? And you might, who knows? You might do a bunch of stuff. A lot of times, what happens is, so working with clients, it's like we would fix the smoking symptom, but then I might get a message from them 36 months later. Hey, Ben, I'm really bummed out. I feel like I failed. I had a cigarette the other day. Okay, well, what happened? Well, I had a fight with my daughter. Oh, my son said this thing to me. My husband was being a jerk, whatever it is. So it's almost like what we want to do is fix everything around that problem, that presenting problem. If we do that, it's the chance of that person creating a lasting change is going to be magnified tremendously, right? Because it's like, well, now we've went into, okay, what happens if my daughter says something nasty about me online, or my husband's being a jerk that day? What are the things because we've created a space for that client to explore it, and for their unconscious mind to generate insights and understandings and resources, it's like, well, great, that's a good thing. So what I've essentially done with the way I approach change work is it's like we've just embraced the honesty, we've embraced the truth. I always said the path to freedom is going to be in truth, right? So that's what we're doing. We're just working with what's actually coming up for that client. And so I think this is a really cool thing to consider, and I'm sure you can start deploying some of this into your practice. I think one of the things you might struggle with, though, is if you are operating in a way that's a bit more technique dependent. I know at the time for me, I was a bit nervous to go in and really push on those barriers with people and test them. Because like I kind of wanted that belief there. Now it's like, oh, cool. So you're saying you're good. Well, let's light up a cigarette. You said you're all set. You're done smoking. Give me one. I'll have one with you. Right? Something like that. It's like I really want to put the pressure on them there. I literally try to break it. And I think what happens is that client gets a new level of understanding that, like, yeah, this is really on me to make the choice. It's not about I saw some guy and there's a magic occurred. I'm not saying that can't happen. I've had those outcomes before with people. It's incredible. The other thing here, it's a bit off topic, but it's still sort of related. This might be a bit hard to explain depending on the context you have, but sometimes when I'm working with a client, their brain is just absolutely fried. Okay? There's a good chance I'm not going to test that person. Like, if they don't have the mental faculties to, like, even look at me, because we've just done so much work, and their mind's clearly in a state of, like, processing change. A lot of times I'll let those people go. And I'm pretty confident, though, like, it might take a little bit for that change to integrate, but once their mind's just completely washed like that, we don't really, at that point, it's more about giving them time and space to sort of reorient to what's going on. It's a very interesting place to be. I've been on that side as a client as well, where you don't even know what's going on anymore. So it's a whole lot that I'm sharing here. The big thing that is, I just to kind of summarize, I think it's great you're paying attention to that instinct. I would say continue to do so. I think there's a lot of value in that. It'll make you a tremendous practitioner. There's a reason I say clients have been my biggest teachers. It's going up, and it's all the things that went wrong. Right, those are by far the most important things for my success. It was everything that went wrong, right? And then you hear like the cliche phrase that failure is feedback. But like a lot of times the folks that say that, you can see they're not really embracing that reality because it doesn't feel good, right? It doesn't feel particularly good when you're not getting the outcome you want, okay? It doesn't make it any less true though. Now, just because failure is feedback does not matter if we don't observe that feedback and absorb it and think about it. And then we got to like ask ourselves, is this a skill set question? Do I got to increase my ability somewhere? Or is it just a time on task thing? I just need to like sit and hammer this out another 30 sessions and I'll be good at it. Or do I need to change the way I work entirely? Right? We want to keep all these questions on the table. And here's, I think, the hard part as a practitioner. It's like you want to continue to develop, but you still got to move forward seeing clients, right? Because again, that's where all the real learning is. So a whole lot here. I hope that helps. If you have any follow-up questions about this, I would love to hear from you. I mean, I could kind of give you like techniques to make yourself feel more confident, but I think to the extent you're willing to embrace the reality that like that's what you really feel and it's a message, and I think there's more value in you just kind of exploring that and accepting it. And you know, I can tell you if I waited around to feel confident before I started seeing clients, I would have never saw anybody. You know, that's just the reality of the thing. We all kind of have to go out and do it. There's that phrase like fake it till you make it. That's not like there's not another thing though, right? There's only that, like, you have to just kind of put yourself out there regardless of how you feel and get the experience. Right? There's no other thing. That's the only path. Unless you've found like some like apprenticeship or kind of situation. Like my entire training is demo based, right? I'm trying to get as much time on task over 2 days with people as possible. Like I do my best to not interrupt. I really want folks to get things wrong as much as possible in the session because that's how they're going to learn, right? So this is, you know, maybe those types of things are helpful for you. But ultimately your ability to develop confidence, that's a competence thing. And I don't think there's like a real way to like trick yourself to experiencing that more. I think it is just about embracing the reality of where you are. And when you find yourself getting kind of weird and putting pressure on yourself, just realize like nobody was born a hypnotist, right? Like anybody that you look up to that's good at this stuff, they started exactly where you did, right? They weren't born with like like a swirly rattle. I don't know. I was trying to think of some cliche. They weren't born with a pocket watch to swing. So I think these are like hopefully this is helpful. I'm going to end this video now because I'm just rambling. If you have any other questions or anything, fire away. I'd love to hear, you know, how else I can help. So take care, everybody.